Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm going to start this out by making an apology before we get going. I just going to apologize. It's all my fault. I am taking full responsibility for the stupidity of my industry. I'm here on behalf of all true performance professionals to apologize for the people in the fitness industry who give bad information. So, with that apology and accountability out of the way, I want to go through and talk today about 5 myths that you have been told, 5 things you've been sold that you need to get rid of, right? We gave them to you. It was bad information. It was perpetuated by us. We started it. And so I'm going to own it and we're going to fix it today. Does that sound okay? All right. So the fitness industry is full of false information and too many myths to mention. So I'm just going to give you my current top 5, and they're probably in no particular order. Myth number 1 is muscle weighs more than fat. Myth 2, super complex movements are great for your metabolism. Myth 3, you need to avoid carbs at all cost. Myth 4, you need to eat clean. And myth 5, just about anything that comes out of an influencer yelling at you walking down the grocery store. Let's jump into myth number 1. Muscle weighs more than fat. This is one of the dumbest things I've heard. And if you've ever said it, fret not. I've recently heard it actually from trainers in a gym setting. No, muscle does not weigh more than fat. Weight is gravitational pull. A pound is a pound. A pound of muscle is the same as a pound of fat. They both weigh a pound. But here's what I think is meant by this stupid saying. Number 1, muscle is more dense than fat. A pound of fat is more voluminous. It has more volume than a pound of muscle, and so muscle being more dense tends to be smaller. So if you gain a pound of muscle, it's less visible on your body than the pound of fat is. Number 2, muscle has a leaner shape to it. Because muscle tissue is dense, we typically look smaller when we lose fat and gain muscle. The shape of the muscle creates a slimmer look, and an overall adding on pounds of muscle will make you smaller than adding on pounds of voluminous fat. And finally, muscle has a higher metabolic need than fat does. Fat does have a metabolism. Its metabolic rate, however, is lower than muscle, and thus, as I'm sure you've heard before, it's easier to stay lean and fit when you have more muscle because of the higher metabolism that the muscle has. Now, myth number 2 is complex movements are great for metabolism. And I would also add the idea of spot reduction, because this is an extremely toxic trend I see on social media these days, where influencers post exercises that are extremely complex. And this is not just limited to the poor TikTok videos that you see out there. I've seen them all over on this LinkedIn platform as well. While they may be good for looks and clicks, they're not better for boosting your metabolism or your metabolic rate. In fact, you are at a disadvantage in every effort to, in the effort to reward ratio when you make movements too complex. Good old stay-at-home Sally, who looks like she's never eaten a sandwich in her life, showing up to an exercise that combines 3 or 4 movements together is not, quote, stoking your metabolism, as she says. She's simply increasing the confusion of your nervous system. There's a reason why the best athletes, the ones who look and perform at their best, do simple, repetitive, and basic movements. The more you do a movement, the better you become at doing said movement. The better you become at the movement, the more muscle you are able to recruit to do the movement. The more muscle you can recruit to do the movement, the more you can lift. The more you can lift, the more you gain muscle. The more muscle you gain, the higher your metabolism is. Complex movements, think curl, press, squat, lunge, all at the same time with the same 5-pound dumbbells in your hand, do nothing to increase your overall strength. They do not increase your metabolism, and they may actually be detrimental to your progress in the long run. And let's settle this once for all, can we? Anytime you see a post or of a video saying, do this exercise to make your waistline smaller, your butt smaller, etc., run. Run from that person. Folks, we have decades of research showing that you cannot spot reduce an area. Doing an abdominal exercise does nothing to reduce the midsection. Doing a bunch of side leg lifts does not reduce the size of the fat that sits on the side of my hip. There is no way for an exercise to reduce fat in that particular area. Scientifically, it is false. It does not happen. And anyone that tells you that that's the case, run. Myth number 3, you need to avoid carbs at all costs. This is particularly insidious because we've moved from fat being the bad guy when I was a kid to now carbs are the bad guy. Now, would most people do better on a lower carbohydrate diet than what they're currently eating? Probably. But that has to do more with the overconsumption of carbohydrates and sugar in our American diets and less to do with the idea that the carbohydrates are bad. Many of you have heard me state on my podcast that I tend to be in what is technically classified as a lower carbohydrate diet throughout the year. But I want to explain what that is and why. It's not because I'm afraid of carbs or that I think that they are bad for you. It's just that I prioritize protein for several reasons, which I won't get to in this particular live. But if you do believe in and want to know how to prioritize protein, one of the things that you can do is drop me a comment that says protein in it, or shoot me a DM, and I will send you my protein calorie to ratio guide for free. Now, like I said, I prioritize protein. I do so for several reasons. I also make sure that I have fat in my diet to keep me satisfied, full, and energetic throughout the day. The proteins and fats help me maintain a great hormonal profile. And once my proteins and fats are built into my eating plan, the rest of my energy comes from carbs. And that tends to be on the lower end because of the top 2 priorities. However, there are times of the year when I increase my carbohydrates depending on my training and my goals. For instance, when I'm in an accumulation phase of my training where higher volume is the name of the game, I increase my carbohydrates to fuel my workouts and make sure that I can grow the muscle that I'm looking for. I also enjoy higher carbohydrate levels when I travel to areas of the world where fruits are in season, things that I don't get in the middle of winter in Utah. One of the reasons carbohydrates have been villainized is we have, like many things, taken consumption of carbs to an extreme. The food products that we eat are loaded with added sugars to make them more palatable. Many Americans, in fact, have become insulin resistant because of the constant sugar drip that they are on, and thus carbohydrates have become a problem. No, you don't need to avoid carbs. And yes, you can lose fat while eating carbs. You just need to learn how. Myth number 4, you need to eat clean. Much like many of the other dietary dogmas, the clean eating message continues to menace people. Clean eating advocates claim that you need to get rid of anything that is not whole foods based and that you need to eat things that don't have any, quote, chemicals in it. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not advocating that you go all in on the Krispy Kreme and the Lay's potato chips, but the idea that everything you eat needs to come from clean sources creates and feeds into a binary that makes you fearful of food. There is no moral value to food, and yet we place judgment on it constantly. I ate good. I ate bad. These are descriptors. They're judgments, and they have no place in the way that we describe the food that we eat. Food is so much more than good, bad, clean, or not. Food is culture, connection, convenience, communication, and comfort. If you want to learn how to eat in a way that is not dogmatic, then you need to learn how to prioritize all 5 C's across the course of a week, a month, and a year. And finally, myth 5. Just about anything that comes out of any influencer's mouth while they are running through a grocery store and yelling at you to stay away from fill in the blank. Okay, now this one isn't really a myth. It's probably just a pet peeve of mine. I'm just so sick of seeing people on social media walk through a grocery store and put out panic porn telling us all of the stuff in the food that's bad. Don't get me wrong. I believe there's a lot of things wrong in our food system and what is being put into our food products. But for heaven's sakes, can we stop with the panic porn? Yes, eating foods with significant processing and additional chemicals will cause problems in the long run. No, it doesn't help to make everyone fearful. Social media influencers, idiots like Gary Brecka or Paul Saladino, are the new version of the cheap evangelists like Kenneth Copeland, Jimmy Swaggart, or my personal favorite when I was a kid, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. They preach fear, ask for your money, and leave you feeling like garbage. You want a general rule of thumb? Map out your nutrition. If you can get about 80 to 90% of the volume that you eat from whole foods, things that don't come in a package, that don't have multiple ingredients, and about 10 to 20% from foods that come in a package and might be a little more processed, you're probably on a better way towards good health. Well, there you have it, folks. That's my current top 5 myths, or maybe it's just my top 5 pet peeves about the fitness industry and the things that you'll hear today. Myth number 1, muscle weighs more than fat. Myth number 2, complex movements are great for metabolism. Myth number 3, you need to avoid carbs at all costs. Myth number 4, you need to eat clean. And myth number 5, just about anything that comes out of Gary Brecka, Paul Saladino, or any of those idiots running through the grocery store telling you not to eat X, Y, or Z. Now, I'm curious, what are yours? What questions do you have, and what do you think may be a myth, but you're not quite sure? I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message. Send me a comment. Let me know what are the myths that you're curious about. As I mentioned before, my free gift to you today is that if you want to know how to eat more protein and pack that into your day, shoot me the word protein, and I will get you my free protein to calorie ratio guide to help get you started. Thanks for joining me today. I'll look forward to chatting with you soon.